Winning Mr. Olympia is the greatest achievement any bodybuilder can achieve, closely followed by getting attention from a woman for the first time in their lives, rather than just other jack dudes. Going through title holders, you can see some of the greats, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, Lee Haney, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, and Phil Heath. There's just one name missing. One famous bodybuilder that has never won Mr. Olympia, only to come so close but still fall short. Over the next 3 days, I'm going to be training and learning about the workout philosophy and the life of Mike Menzter, one of the best bodybuilders to never win Mr. Olympia. I started working out a couple years ago, not to win Mr. Olympia or even really become a bodybuilder. I did it to help my one friend lose weight, and then I really started to enjoy getting stronger and seeing the weight go up on the bar. But to be fair, I've always played sports and been athletic. My first experience with Mike Menzter came up a while ago when I watched a Will Tennyson video. He kind of just brushed over what workouts he did and kind of the diet he had and how different he was from everyone else. Later, he'd pop up on my shorts. It was always a very interesting character to me, and I basically became a Mike Menzter stan. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to learn more about him and start training like him and figure out what he's all about. I would start the month at 192.6 pounds and have a physique that looks like this. Growing up in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, he had a very typical suburban upbringing. At 11 years old, he saw a magazine with Bill Pearl on it and immediately fell in love with bodybuilding. At Christmas, his father wouldn't get him toys or even an Xbox. It was the 1960s after all. Fun hadn't been invented yet. Instead, his father would give him some dumbbells. And after seeing his dedication with just that, Mike's father would get in touch with his friend John, who had a full gym in his garage. After a few years, John would take Mike to the first ever Mr. Olympia in 1965, New York City. This would become a religious experience for Mike and continue down this path, despite every twist and turn life would throw at him. Now, Mike must have really hated working out and just liked big muscles, because just after 1 week, I barely felt like I worked out at all. None of the workouts went over 30 minutes, and a lot of time spent was just switching between exercises and getting things set up. It was split similarly to a bro split, which I talked about previously in my Thor video, but very condensed, which didn't really feel possible. Anyway, the first day is chest and back, with chest starting out with some kind of fly. It's kind of up to you what you want or what you feel most comfortable with or what you have available to you. Supersetted into doing an incline bench press. I found this idea to be pretty interesting because you're supposed to go to failure on every set, and the chest fly is intended to pre-exhaust your chest before you do the incline bench press. There's also a really big emphasis on super slow tempo and a very strict form, which isn't too abnormal, but Mike was specific about making sure you have perfect form before you even think about doing another rep or even increasing the weight. Part of me liked the pre-exhaustion strategy because it made me feel a little safer going to failure on the incline bench press rather than trying to max out the incline bench press immediately, which might injure me, and helps me get a good chest muscle stimulus. After you finish chest, you're going to back on that same day. Once we get to the back portion of the day, it's a similar pre-exhaustion strategy with the lats. It has you doing cable lat extension into close grip lat pull downs, then finishing it up with deadlifts, which is a bit of a back exercise. I personally would count it more as a lower body exercise, but that's a minor issue. Honestly, the deadlift kind of covers a lot of the muscles in your body. Day 2 was legs, and it was honestly one of the easiest leg days of my life. I did a pretty exhaustive set of leg extensions before going into the back squat. And of course, you took everything to failure. The rest of leg day was leg curls to failure and then calf raises to failure. This all felt hard, but not super difficult. Leg day is also the day you do abs, and it's also the only day you hit abs throughout the entire workout routine. And yes, this one's also just one set of one exercise. It's doing decline sit-ups to failure. Usually I'd expect 2 or maybe 3 exercises for your core or abs, maybe 1 or 2 for the abs themselves, and at least 1 more to hit the obliques. Day 3 was shoulders and arms, and this is a little different from your typical shoulder day. I only really did lateral raises and reverse flies for my shoulders. Nothing for the front delts at all. Mike believed that the front delts got enough work in when we did incline bench press on the first day. I think in some worlds, it's possible that your front delts got hit more than enough in your basic pushing movements, and no more would be done to specifically hit them. With this routine, I do think a little more specific targeting for them would help, considering only doing 1 set really for them, and they're not even a main mover in that exercise. For arms, I did a barbell bicep curl and a tricep cable pushdown, supersetted with weighted dips. The main problem I found this day was finding a good weight in the rep range and also get to failure. This was a little present in the other days, but on arms and shoulders, it was really exemplified. This is probably because adding 5 or 10 more pounds on your arms is a lot more than just adding 5 or 10 pounds for your legs or your chest or your back. All these workouts were hardish, and it was a little difficult to figure out if I was doing any of them right. My main concern is I'm going to lose muscle and kind of waste my time in the gym this month. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Mike would enter his first bodybuilding competitions at 18 for Lancaster County and for the state of PA, winning both. Later, when he competed in Teenage Mr. America, he would get his worst showing in his career, finishing 10th, and with Casey Viator winning first. Casey would see Mike and little bro him a little bit and tell him to call Arthur Jones if he ever wanted to get big. Mike would later call, and Arthur wouldn't pick up immediately, so he just left a message. Jones would later return the call at 3 a.m. where all the best revelations happened. Jones's mentality deviated from a lot of bodybuilders at the time, which is working out a lot and doing a lot of volume. Jones basically gave Mike a lecture and told him that exercise needed to be brief and infrequent. This one phone call would change the way Mike thinks about exercise and carve his own path in the scene. During the second week, I started to appreciate the routine a little bit more. I have so much more free time, and I'm doing cardio more often nowadays, which is something you never expect anyone to say. I'm also working harder in these workouts and doing better at pushing to failure. One thing Mike emphasized when you hit failure is you could do some forced reps to the partner, some eccentric lifts, or just some static holds. Now, I don't have any friends, so it's mostly just a static holds and eccentric lifts so I can force the weight back up. The main problem I'm facing is that I feel a little bit of a burn in my muscles, but it's very short lasting. It's not the strong burn I usually feel when I know I've exhausted the muscle. I also feel like I'm progressing slowly. Usually the pre-exhaustive exercise makes it harder to progress on the next one. One thing that's been helping is that I'm really trying to grind out reps and squeak in one more rep just before I end the set. And I started to realize that I could probably do more than I originally thought. Legs this time around was a bit more of a burn and a bit more of a wiggly feeling in my legs, but again, it was short lasting. On abs, I felt a little bit of a better mind-muscle connection, but nothing really special there. Shoulders and arms felt good, and I'm starting to think I'm growing muscles in these areas particularly. One note is that I switched the reverse dumbbell fly with a cable reverse fly. I just don't really like this movement with dumbbells, and the cable feels so much better and it's something I'm more used to. Concentrating on my form and a slow tempo really improved towards the end of week 2, and something I look to improve on throughout these weeks, mainly to help reduce the risk of injury, which is ironic because I think I injured my tricep a little bit towards the end of this week. Part of me is worried I might have to end this challenge short if it persists. Hopefully it's nothing major. Shortly after Mike talked with Jones, he would get injured and be out of the gym for about 8 months. On top of joining the Air Force, working 12-hour shifts, a night job, and having a girlfriend, Mike would stop lifting altogether and fall out of shape. He would stop bodybuilding. The dream he built up when he was younger would slowly start to fade away. This would end up being a really depressing time for Mike. As the years passed, Mike would grow an appetite to get back into bodybuilding. Inevitably, he had a lot of changes to make. In 1974, Mike would leave the Air Force and go back to college for a pre-med program with the goal of eventually becoming a psychiatrist. He would also get back on that mindset grind set and return to the gym. Immediately, Mike would make an enormous comeback to the bodybuilding scene. Later in 1974, Mike would go on to later win the Junior Mr. America, but he wanted more. He wanted the back-to-back, the 2-time win for a real Mr. America win. Sadly, he would end up getting third. But not all was lost though. During the event, Mike would meet Joe Weider, famous bodybuilder, co-founder of the IFBB, creator of the Mr. Olympia, and most important to Mike, publisher of Muscle Builder magazine, where Mike would write a few articles for Joe, which became so lucrative that Mike would decide to drop out of college and join Weider in LA. He'd be writing and be a bodybuilder full time. Mike was so back, winning Mr. America in 1976 and winning Mr. Universe in 1978 with the first ever perfect score in IFBB history. And for the Mr. Universe in 1978, Mike would claim he was able to grow 14 pounds of muscle in that time.
And improved enough to not just win the contest, but totally freak out the judges and people had seen me the year before because I gained 14 pounds of muscle.
His sights were now set on the final boss of bodybuilding, Mr. Olympia. Luckily, my tricep injury healed itself over time. Maybe just like a minor thing that I tweaked. Not really sure. The third week was more of the same. Marginal to questionable gains at best, and very little time spent working out. As much as I've been enjoying working out for only an hour and a half each week, I miss my usual workouts where I feel like I get a good burn and have a little more control over the progress I'm making. Also, one thing that makes me feel super awkward in the gym when I'm doing these is that if I have to superset something and someone is using the machine that I need to use, I feel very awkward asking them how many more sets they have or if I can work in. You know I'm only going to be there for one set. Like imagine this, you're working out, you're on a certain machine, someone comes up to you and asks if they could work in with you, and you say yeah sure, you don't mind. They hop on, they do one very intense set, and then they leave to never come back. What goes through your head when that happens? Mystery, intrigue, confusion? Do you wonder if you smell bad? It's probably that one. Do you end up confronting them later if you see them again? It just feels like such a bizarre experience to see in the gym. Rarely after these workouts do I ever really feel sore. Although when I start leg day, my legs feel like they're still a little sore or tired from last time I worked out. Like they aren't 100%, but I don't really feel them when I'm doing leg extensions. I've also never really started the day with doing leg extensions, so maybe this is how they normally feel if you start off doing that. I've had more improvement and focus on doing some eccentric lifts and holding the weight till my muscles physically couldn't hold it anymore. I'm not sure if it helps with muscle growth, but I am feeling a little bit of a burn, and it's what Mike prescribed, so I'm going to have to do it. And I've only got a little bit more left now. Mike was looking strong and confident for the 1979 Mr. Olympia, who would all suddenly come crashing down when his mom would get gravely sick. He didn't know what to do. There was nothing that could be done. He would end up passing away a few weeks later. He stopped training, he ate all the wrong foods, and Mike would have to end up passing on his Mr. Olympia debut, and maybe his bodybuilding career altogether. That would be until his brother Ray came to him and said it'd be okay if he missed this year and just picked up again next year. People would understand. Obviously, out of pure respect to everyone who thinks he couldn't do it, Mike would train his ass off with whatever time he had left and enter the competition, winning the heavyweight division but getting second overall. Not the result he wanted, it was one he was happy with, and was set on winning Mr. Olympia next year. Mike would really have his work cut out for him that next year. Now, Mike is someone who likes to work and felt like he could always be doing more if only he had more energy. So he did the obvious thing that most of us would do, and start his mornings with a nice dose of amphetamines. Now, he claims in an interview that it was prescribed to him by a doctor, and that he personally looked into them and found no long-term physical health effect, only short bursts of psychosis, which he thinks he can ward off. He's quoted in saying, "I don't think there's anything wrong in taking stimulants to make me work as hard as I was. A lot of people drink coffee and smoke cigarettes to stay stimulated and be productive." So, basically the same thing. The 1980 Mr. Olympia would approach, and Mike would find himself on death's door twice during that time. He'd be unable to move out of bed and felt so weak he couldn't even lift his arm. And right before the competition started, I could get this feeling again. And as one last surprise, Arnold would announce he's coming out of retirement for one last show at the 1980 Mr. Olympia. This would also become the most controversial Mr. Olympia in IFBB history. This last week was a big relief. I was getting tired of this whole thing and really wanted it to be over. Not because it was too hard or I was getting too sore. It'd be for opposite reasons. It was hard, but only briefly, and nowhere near as hard as it could have been. There was basically zero muscle soreness throughout this whole experiment. Looking through my thoughts over the weeks, it was interesting to see how excited I was in the beginning and how much I enjoyed all the free time I started to have. Then it started to go into me wanting to do more, me not liking bouncing around from exercise to exercise, feeling strong and weak variably, always self-conscious about whether I'm doing things right, which isn't necessarily exclusive to the gym, but the progress was just really hard to see, or just was non-existent really. I was moving up weight somewhat quickly in the beginning, but that could just be miscalculating how much I really needed to have in order to get to failure. Week 3 and 4 had very little, if any, increase in progress. I guess it's also difficult to gauge how much weight I should do after I exhaust the muscle with some of these exercises. With this all done, I just didn't feel like there was much left for me. I'd finish the month at 196.8 pounds and have a physique that looks like this. It definitely looks like I'm bigger, but it's hard to tell how much of that is muscle versus fat. There were some good ideas and concepts from Mike that I can bring over into my own workouts, although it should be obvious that his style didn't obviously take over the bodybuilding world, but neither did maximizing time and volume in the gym, which most of Mike's peers adopted at the time. We ended up somewhere closer in the middle, where most bodybuilders train for about an hour with good intensity and good volume. Just before the start of the show, Mike would recover physically, but mentally he was on a different continent. And before the competition could even begin, the controversy would start. 15 of the competitors, including Mike, would want to get rid of the heavyweight and lightweight divisions of the competition and would rather just be all one big open category. Arnold was the only one against this, arguing very aggressively and some thinking he was being very rude. Mike would step in and actually sit Arnold down. The tension was getting very high and a fight was not the question. Luckily, the organizers quickly diffused the situation and sided with the majority. This may seem like the end of the controversy, but it's only getting started. At the time, Mike was one of the most famous bodybuilders in the world. He owes a lot of this to being a better writer than most of his peers in the scene. Many people thought he could win Mr. Olympia just on the pure popularity alone. Little to say, he was favored to win. Arnold obviously threw a wrench into these plans, but according to Mike, Arnold wasn't in peak condition. His prime had gone and passed. The crowd seemed to think this too, because when Arnold won first, he was booed on stage. Mike would get a disappointing 5th place. Many bodybuilders after the show would end up retiring due to what happened, including Mike. Trying to move on from this would be hard. He'd end up bouncing around between a few jobs, still taking amphetamines, and eventually granted the ability to work on his own magazine. Tragically, this was short-lived. Just as the magazine started becoming profitable, the plug would be pulled from the publication in 1985, and there would be no stopping to pick up the pieces for Mike. He would break up with his girlfriend in over 10 years, and worst of all, his dad would pass away soon after. The years following, Mike would be institutionalized for his mental episodes. Everything was going wrong in Mike's life, slowly, then all at once. Over the next 5 years, from 1985 to 1990, wild stories of Mike would pop up. Some true, some not being true. At this time, many people would abandon Mike, with only 2 people left supporting him, his ex-girlfriend and his friend John Little. No one from the bodybuilding seemed to be there to support Mike. This is very disappointing for him. He gave most of his life to this industry, but no one was willing to lend a helping hand when he needed it most. By the time 1990 would roll around, Mike would be amphetamine-free for 18 months, and would be able to come to terms with everything that happened in 1985. Mike would spend the rest of his life in Venice, California, doing what he does best. Training others, and doing some writing on the side. In June of 2001, Mike would die of a heart attack at the age of 49. His brother would find the body, pass away just 48 hours later, ending the tragic legacy of the greatest bodybuilder to never win Mr. Olympia.
For those who want to build muscle mass, the most important principle is that of intensity. The harder you train, the more weight you lift, the more you put into it, the more muscle you'll develop.
A promise that we made in the sun, and as a sense you left your heart in my hands. You know it's one thing to say that you love me, baby.
interview was quite surprised that I was only training 3 to 5 sets per body part, 2 days a week.
Whenever you like, stay, 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 stay. Wishing you could hate me for all my mistakes. Wait, tell me you're alive. Tell me that your life isn't complete without me. And tell me that you're mine. No, no, we both know that's not how it's gonna.
A lot of people don't like the appearance of bodybuilders. They think it's kind of grotesque. Was that hard for you to deal with people saying to you, you look hard, you're too big, you're too...
No. As a matter of fact, I was always a bit of a rebel throughout my life, and the thought that I would be different from other people never bothered me. And when I heard that it bothered other people, it even gave me more impetus to continue training.
Used to being all alone, not like my comfort zone. Every vision in my mind, none of them have you this time. When you shot your gun at me, felt the world begin to bleed. How the pain felt so surreal as the world fell down on top of me. And I've grown to be in constant fear if anyone looking in from the outside can. But bravery lives in my heart at home, facing my fears every time that I feel alone. I'm not the same.
Not just win the contest, but totally freak out the judges and people had seen me the year before because I gained 40 pounds.
Come back whenever you like. Stay, 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 stay. Wishing you could hate me for all my mistakes. Wait, tell me you're alive. Tell me that your life isn't complete without me. And tell me that you're mine. No, no, we both know that's not how it's gonna play out. So hold me one more time. So hold me one more time. So hold me one more time.
Well, most bodybuilders train at least 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, but I only train a total of 3 hours a week.
Okay, what do you do during those hours?
Train very hard.
A year later, in 2002, Mike would posthumously be inducted to the IFBB Hall of Fame. This has been a peek into the life of training of the late Mike Menzter. Thank you for watching.